If there is to be a new solution, you must act.
The original Mass Effect trilogy is one of the best sci-fi RPGs ever released. It is a series that gave its players lots of freedom of choice in how they play the game and interact with the world around them. A feature that contributed to overt feelings of disappointment that many experienced in the final installment's ending. Mass Effect 3 takes all of the decisions you have made after hundreds of hours and 3 games and reduces them down to something that barely concludes the plot, let alone the theme. Well, we have set out to remedy this, and with 2023's end coming in just a few weeks, now is the perfect time to talk about it. I am your host Jacob. Join us as we rewrite the end of Mass Effect 3. For those of you who are not familiar with the games, let me give you a brief rundown of the trilogy and the in-game history. Alien civilizations interact with one another and have formed a galactic community. The community is governed by a galactic council and uses an ancient alien construct known as the Citadel as its seat of governance. 2200 years before the start of the first game, the galaxy was in danger of being overrun by a bug race known as the Rachni. Fortunately, a species known as the Krogan were able to beat back and eradicate the Rachni. Unfortunately, the Krogan breed like rabbits, and so the Solarian race created a plague known as the genophage, which lowered the birth rate of Krogans to extremely dangerous levels. 300 years before the events of the first game, a race known as the Quarians illegally created a race of sentient machines that became known as the Geth. As any good sci-fi machine race does, they turned against their creators and fought a war against them, which caused the Quarians to leave their home planet and flee in a giant migrant fleet. 26 years before the events of the game, humanity advanced far enough to discover the galactic community, and as any good sci-fi human race does, immediately got into a war with a race known as the Turians. This became known as the First Contact War. It was ended more or less peacefully, but there is still a lot of mistrust between the human and Turian races as a result. At the start of the original Mass Effect, we are introduced to Commander Shepard, a human soldier on his way to collect ancient technology on a human colony. Shepard is joined by a Turian Spectre sent to evaluate his performance. Spectres are elite operatives that report directly to the Galactic Council, and the Turian, ironically named Nihilus, is evaluating Shepard for the role. During their mission, a third Spectre named Saren shoots and kills Nihilus, and Shepard makes it his mission to bring him to justice. Along the way, Shepard recruits what the game calls companions and makes several discoveries. These discoveries include the fact that the Rachni were not fully eradicated, and that Saren has been indoctrinated by an ancient, synthetic race known as the Reapers. The Reapers wait for organic life to advance to a high technological point. Then they pop into the galaxy, destroy that life, and pop back out again. This cycle has continued for hundreds of thousands of years, and now the Reaper, known as Sovereign, needs to take control of the Citadel to start the invasion. Shepard is, of course, successful in preventing this, and he kills Saren in the process. The second game starts with Shepard dying after his ship is attacked by a new race known as the Collectors. This isn't a fake out, he actually does die, but he is resurrected by a pro-human organization called Cerberus. Cerberus is run by an individual we only know as the Elusive Man, and he sends Shepard out to investigate and stop the Collectors, who are systematically invading human colonies and abducting their inhabitants. Along the way, Shepard will recruit a whopping 12 companions. In fact, 2/3 of this game is dedicated to the recruitment missions and subsequent loyalty missions of all 12 companions, some of which are old crewmates and some of which are brand new characters. But these loyalty missions are very important, so don't feel like it is a waste of time. If your companions are not loyal to you at the time of the final mission, they will likely die, which will influence the story of the third game. The final mission is to prevent the captured human colonists from being used to create a new Reaper, as it is discovered that the biologic life wiped out in each cycle is harvested and conjoined to create the Reaper's core. The ending cutscene shows an imminent Reaper invasion approaching the outer rim of the galaxy. The opening of the third game finds Commander Shepard fleeing Earth as the Reapers invade. He sets out to align all the disparate factions of the galaxy against this threat, even as they are being invaded by the Reapers as well. This game does not focus on the companions nearly as much, as there are only 7 of them and no loyalty missions. One of those companions is EDI. the shipboard AI from Mass Effect 2 that now has the ability to inhabit an android body. EDI has basically become sentient thanks to series' original character Joker removing the programming limits in her code, and the two of them begin a romance unless the player discourages it. Rather than focusing primarily on companion missions, Mass Effect 3 revolves around fighting Cerberus' schemes to try and control the Reapers and constructing a weapon known as the Crucible that will be able to defeat the Reaper threat. The Crucible is an unfinished plan of the ancient aliens who fought against the Reapers in the past, so Shepard is sent to various locations to assist with researching this weapon. Other missions will give him options to recruit factions against the Reapers, including a mission that sees the Genophage cured and the Quarian-Geth conflict brought to an end. The Quarian-Geth war is particularly difficult to stop in a satisfying way, though, because it requires specific decisions being made in Mass Effect 2 that are not necessarily obvious. In many playthroughs, players will end up choosing either the Geth or the Quarians to win. Eventually, the player will lead an all-out assault against the Reapers to take control of the Citadel, which has been brought to Earth because of course it has. The assault starts by a combined fleet trying to break through enemy defenses in orbit, turns into a ground attack to defeat a single destroyer-class Reaper protecting a device that will let ground forces enter the Citadel, and culminates with a second fleet led by Admiral Hackett, bringing the now finished Crucible to the Citadel. Shepard, of course, will make it onto the Citadel, where he encounters a now fully indoctrinated Illusive Man. Shepard defeats the Illusive Man and opens the arms of the Citadel to allow the Crucible to connect. He is then extracted by an AI that is actually in control of all Reapers, known as the Catalyst. The Catalyst explains that its creators were afraid of AI becoming fully sentient and wiping out organic life, so they tasked it with creating a solution to this fear. Its solution was to harvest all organic life before it became advanced enough to create the AI threat, and thus the Reaper cycle started when Catalyst harvested and eradicated its creators.
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal!
However, since organic life found a way to pass on information through these destructive cycles and build the Crucible, it now believes that its solution is no longer sufficient. So, as all advanced alien AI should do, it allows a single human to decide the fate of the galaxy, because humanity number one, baby. And this is where we can finally talk about the endings. But before we do, I do want to briefly touch on the war asset system. Pretty much every decision you make in the game that isn't strictly dialogue will contribute to war assets. The more war assets you have, the better the final battle will go against the Reapers. The game accomplishes this by altering the cutscenes during the space assault over Earth and the ground assault at the end of the game. If you don't have enough war assets, the Reapers inflict heavier casualties in orbit before you touch down, and your companions are killed during the ground assault. If you do have enough, then the Reapers take more casualties in orbit, and your companions will survive the final ground assault. The war asset system is what I see as a necessary evil. I think you have to have something like this to bring about a concise ending after 3 whole games with dozens of decisions that could affect it. That said, I do think it was disappointing that there were not additional cinematics that showed you the results of at least some of these decisions. For example, the ground assault on Earth always shows humans, Turians, Krogan, Asari, and Solarians, because those are the 5 races that join you no matter what. But you never see any other races even if you manage to recruit them. It is just a waste to have 2 minor changes to big cutscenes based solely off war assets, and not consider some of the bigger decisions from across the trilogy. We are not going to go over all of the additional cinematics we would add based off assets and decisions, but I do want to highlight 2 specifically: the Rachni and the Destiny Ascension. Like I said in my recap, Shepard has discovered that the Rachni are not actually extinct in the first game. What I did not say is the player can actually choose to make them extinct or release them to find a new home. This decision is followed up on in Mass Effect 3, because the player will have the ability to recruit them to your side if they were released. But if you do recruit them, you never see it affect the battle. They're just a picture and number on your war asset screen. I would have loved a scene in which a ground unit is about to be overrun by Reaper husks until a swarm of Rachni rush forward and rescue them. At least then, we would have seen the direct consequences of our actions. The Destiny Ascension is another choice that I think had a lot of cinematic value. At the end of the first game, the player can choose to save a massive Asari battleship called the Destiny Ascension by asking Admiral Hackett to intervene on its behalf. If you did intervene, Ascension is added to your war assets, but you never see the ship during the initial orbital battle or when Hackett jumps the Crucible into the system. It would have been really awesome to see a scene in which Admiral Hackett's ship is about to be destroyed, but is saved by the Ascension, and then the Ascension's captain get a chance to hail Hackett and say how happy they are to have been able to return the favor. It would have given a lot more weight to a decision made 2 games ago that you just don't feel when it is represented by numbers on a screen. There are other decisions I would like to see better represented, but like I said, we don't have time to go over all of them. So now let's turn our attention to the actual endings. In the original game, after the Catalyst gets done telling Shepard that synthetic life will always destroy organic life, it will give him 3 options: destroy, control, and, if your war assets were high enough, synthesis. If the player chooses destroy, Shepard wipes out all synthetic life in the galaxy. This includes the Reapers, the Geth, and anyone who had any cybernetic components like himself. It also destroys the mass relays, which at worst will either completely prevent intergalactic travel and communication, or at best, significantly inhibit it for an extended period of time. If the player chooses control, then Shepard joins his consciousness with the Reapers and takes control of them. It is then implied that the Reapers are used as a police force and help rebuild the galaxy. If the player chooses synthesis, then organic and synthetic life are somehow combined, making the Reaper's mission unnecessary. A DLC was introduced a few months after the release called Extended Cut, which gave some additional cutscenes to give more weight to the war asset system, albeit in a subtle way. The DLC also contained a 4th possible ending called Refuse. If you pick the Refuse option, then the Reapers harvest all life and the cycle continues. None of these options are particularly desirable though, and to reduce a trilogy like this down to just 4 options that do not take into account any of the player's choices is just disappointing. Sure, the decisions factor into the war assets, which the cutscenes account for. The higher the assets, the less damage is done to the galaxy in the ending cinematics. But reducing decisions like whether or not to eradicate an entire species or save the Galactic Council down to a numerical value that affects small details in cinematics just doesn't cut it. From a story perspective though, the worst thing about the endings are that they resolve the plot of the game, but they do little to resolve the theme of the game. If you don't understand the difference, the plot is what happens in a story, whereas the theme is what the story is actually about. For the Mass Effect trilogy, the plot could be summed up like this. A human learns of an ancient race of machines that mean to destroy organic life and must lead a galactic alliance to stop them. But fans of the series will know that such a description diminishes the story tremendously, because it fails to account for how difficult it is to unite the factions of Citadel space. And that is where the theme comes in. The endings in Mass Effect 3 treat the conflict between organic and synthetic life as if it is the most important thing in the trilogy. But many of the choices, adventures, and side missions you go on are about unifying the species of the galaxy together. The bias against humanity that the Council has sets them as a major antagonistic force in the first game. And as you learn more about the history of the universe, you see more and more resentment that each race has against the others. This is especially true for the Krogans, who had a bioweapon used against them, resulting in their race becoming endangered. A weapon created by the Solarians, whom they had just defended against an existential threat. The first thing the Turians did when they joined the galactic community was fight in the Krogan rebellions. And then they fought against the humans when humanity discovered Citadel space. The Quarians created a machine race that they then tried to destroy, only to have the Geth fight them so ferociously that they lost their homeworld. This is a galaxy deeply divided and filled with derision. Yet throughout the trilogy, you will lead members of each of these races, including the Geth during the second game. As I said earlier, 2/3 of Mass Effect 2 is dedicated to these companions, learning about them, fighting with them, gaining their loyalty. It is the dominant amount of activity you will do in that game. And everything you do and learn in the first 2 games will inform your actions in the third, where you will have the opportunity to create a cure for the genophage, rally the Rachni to your cause, determine the winner between the Geth and the Quarians, and lead Turian, Solarian, and Asari fleets into battle. The third game resolves so much tension and anger that has been built up over centuries, if not millennia. If you make the right decisions and say the right things, then the galaxy is truly unified for the first time ever. Heck, we even have a sentient robot dating a human. Yet the endings do not take this into account. They don't even come up as dialogue options with Catalyst. The Catalyst goes on and on about the impossibility of organic life and synthetic life living in peace. But the player is never given the opportunity to say that the Geth and the Quarians are at peace, or that Joker and Edie are romantically involved. Nor do they get the opportunity to declare that the United Galaxy can withstand any threat. Now, to be fair, the synthesis ending touches on the idea of unity by combining organic and synthetic life. But forced unity through synthesis is not exactly the same thing as willful joining of factions. So, since none of the endings truly satisfy the theme, it is up to us to write one that will. Now, as I said earlier, we are not going to go through all cinematic changes we would make based off the war asset system. I would love to go into detail on some of these, but we would probably double the length of the video over small variations, so we are only going to focus on the changes we would make to the dialogue with Catalyst, and how it affects the endings from there. First off, let's talk about what happens if the player fails to get at least 40% of the total war assets. This is what we call our failure ending, since the war assets can be considered a quasi-accurate measurement of how unified the galaxy is. In this ending, Catalyst would chastise Shepard for failing to unify even half the strength of the galaxy under an existential threat, and tell him that the cycle must continue. However, Shepard is allowed to return to Earth and die as he sees fit. Depending on the final dialogue option the player selects, Shepard is shown continuing to fight until the end, or surrounded by his remaining friends on Normandy before the screen fades to black. In either case, a cutscene of a VI based off Liara explains the plans of the Crucible to the next cycle, just like it does in the original Refusal ending. Obviously not the result that you would want, and one based solely off war asset value, which we promise will not be the case for the rest of our alternatives. If the player does achieve at least 40% of the assets, then the dialogue options with the Catalyst will change into more of a debate over the main story threads resolved during the game. Specifically, the genophage, the Geth-Quarian conflict, and the romance between Edie and Joker. And if you just balked at the idea that Edie and Joker's relationship is a main story thread, hang in there, I will explain. But first, let's start with the genophage cure. Curing the genophage gives hope to the Krogan people for the first time in nearly 2 millennia. And it is the first step in reconciliation with the rest of the galactic community. There is no better example of Shepard's ability to unify the species than this. So if a cure for the genophage is completed, Catalyst will offer the destroy ending from the first game. Through some expanded dialogue options, Catalyst will agree that Shepard has managed to overcome some difficult obstacles and led a unified force against the Reapers. So he can choose to destroy the Reapers if he thinks this unity can hold. This ending will take place much like the original Destroy ending. All synthetic life in the galaxy, including Shepard, will be destroyed, and the mass relays will be damaged or destroyed, which will cause significant hardship on the galactic community, since they don't yet have the technological understanding to rebuild them. But the galaxy will be free to choose its own destiny. The next dialogue change revolves around the results of the war between the Geth and the Quarians. When Catalyst brings up the idea that organic and synthetic life will always be in conflict, it will highlight the Geth-Quarian conflict as an example of this. If Shepard chose the Quarians to win the war, then he can't really say anything in response to Catalyst. But if he chose the Geth, he can persuade Catalyst that there can be peace between synthetic and organic life, because they now fight by their side. Catalyst will say that the peace is only temporary, but will acknowledge that peace in any form was only brought about because of Shepard's influence. And this unlocks the control ending. Like the original Control ending, Shepard will join his consciousness with the Reapers and use them to assist in rebuilding the galaxy. However, in our version, it will be more apparent that peace is only maintained because Shepard uses the Reapers as a police force. We would even go so far as to show that he would use the Reaper ability to indoctrinate others to ensure that organics and synthetics never create a large-scale conflict. As such, the galaxy is spared, but their destiny is not exactly in their own hands. Now, to explain why EDI and Joker are so important, let's look at our third option. In a similar but separate dialogue option as the Geth-Corian one, Catalyst will say that synthetic and organic life cannot coexist peacefully for long. At this point, Shepard can bring up the romance between EDI and Joker. If the Geth joining the Alliance against the Reapers can be excused away as uniting against a common foe, EDI and Joker's relationship is a rebuttal by declaring that organic and synthetic life can become intimately entwined. While Catalyst will respond that this is the exception and not the rule, it will admit that this possibility was not foreseen and represents a unique opportunity. This unlocks the synthesis ending. Like the original synthesis ending, all life will be both organic and synthetic, making the Reaper's mission irrelevant. The synthesis ending was always a bit strange to us though, so I'm going to explain a little bit more. According to Sovereign in the first game, every Reaper ship considers itself a civilization unto itself, since, as determined in Mass Effect 2, organic life of the same species was harvested and used as the core of each Reaper. However, since the Reapers are all controlled by a singular AI, there must be a hive mind component as well. So our synthesized life will see itself as an individual unit that is part of one great civilization that encompasses all life. And since there is no longer a distinction between synthetic and organic life, the galaxy exists peacefully, but at the loss of true individuality and unique cultures. Of course, the refusal/failure option will be available to anyone who would rather choose death over cataclysm, authoritarianism, or groupthink. But if you are sitting there staring angrily at the screen, thinking that I am only reorganizing the same bad endings and calling it a rewrite, hang in there because we are not through. Yes, we are leaving these bad options in the game because none of them are the true ending. Remember when I said that you have to side with the Geth during the Corian War to unlock the control ending? Well, when I was talking about it, I only mentioned the alternate option of siding with the Corians. But remember, there is a third option of brokering peace between the two races. For many, this will not be a choice on their initial playthrough, because there is a complex set of prerequisites to make it happen, but peace is possible. So if you cure the genophage, broker peace between the Geth and the Corians, and EDI and Joker are in a romance, then Catalyst will admit that it was wrong and synthetic and organic life can coexist peacefully. It will still offer the destroy, control, and synthesis endings, but the success ending will take the place of the failure/refusal option. If the player chooses success, Shepard returns to the Citadel control room, and the Reapers will break off their invasion, help the races rebuild, and then leave the galaxy in peace. As for Shepard, if you have fewer than 90% of the war assets, he will die of his wounds, and the ending cutscene will be a memorial erected in his honor on the Citadel with all surviving companions there to pay their respects. If you have more than 90%, but less than 100% of the available war assets, then Shepard wakes up in a hospital surrounded by his friends and family. And if you have all of the available war assets, then an extra scene plays showing Shepard and their love interest enjoying life. And while I don't want to go through every single romantic option for both male and female Shepard, I do want to say that you should choose Tali, because Tali best girl. And their happy cutscene shows her able to live on Rannoch without a mask, with Shepard, and in the house she envisions during the Rannoch missions.
The living room window will be right here.
It was always going to be difficult to write an ending to a trilogy like Mass Effect. The freedom players had in making so many choices developed a loyal and passionate fan base. But that freedom also represented the biggest obstacle to creating a concise, satisfying conclusion. However, we do think our changes successfully resolves both the plot and the theme of the trilogy, while effectively taking into consideration the player's choices. Shepard's fate does still rely on the war asset system, but as I said earlier, that is a necessary evil. To have as much content as these games had, every decision needs to have value to it, and war assets are the only way to ensure this can happen. And while not every playthrough can achieve perfect war assets, we do think the additional cutscenes that show the in-game effects of your decisions make up for many of the deficiencies the system has. We also think that giving the destroy, control, and synthesis endings specific narrative triggers, instead of basing them mostly off war asset score, gives them more value. As it is currently written, Catalyst preaches at Shepard before offering options to them that are predetermined by the war asset score and a decision they made at the end of Mass Effect 2. Under our rewrite, other decisions that were made in the final game itself allow additional dialogue choices with Catalyst, and if the player selects them, they unlock their respective ending as an option. The original 3 endings are still in the game. They may be slightly altered, but they are there nonetheless. And while these endings are not particularly good, that is the point. They're imperfect endings for an imperfect playthrough. To get that true, satisfying end, Shepard needs to truly unify the galaxy. It isn't easy to unlock this ending, and it is even harder to keep Shepard alive through it. But hopefully, seeing Shepard and Tali looking out their front window at a peaceful Rannoch will be worth it to you. But with that, we have reached the end of our video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment below on any TV shows, movies, or video games you think need to have their endings rewritten. For Fairly Critical, I have been your host, Jacob. Thank you again, and I will see you in the next one.
I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite store on the Citadel.